Hello everyone, Wade from High Tech Legion here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Corsair Carbide 100R mid-tower case. So this is designed to be a budget case with gamers in mind, but it's also designed for those of us who appreciate silence. So one of the things that they've done here is they have a fairly closed front bezel on it. You do have some venting on the side so that the fans can pull some air in, but you also have a thin matting on both side panels so that that helps deaden the sound, dampen the sound, and also there is no side window that you would typically see on a gaming case because it's more about silence in this case. So on the front panel here, it's pretty basic. You've got two 5 1/4 inch drive bays. I actually do have a CD drive installed in here, DVD drive. Just so you can see what it would look like. You've got two USB 3.0 ports here, as well as a headphone jack, a microphone jack, the reset button, and the power button. The power button lights up white when the machine is on, and then you have a hard drive indicator light that blinks right next to the reset button. You can see the back of it. You've got your motherboard I/O panel here. You've got a 120mm fan exhausting air out of the back, and you've got 7 expansion slots, as well as your power supply section down at the bottom, power supply cutout. So you can put that in either way with the fan facing up or down. On this, the holes are set up for either way. The Pci Express section here, however, is not toolless. It does use some small screws, so you do have to take the 2 screws out. That takes this little cover off, and then you take the screws out for the expansion slots themselves. The expansion slot covers are reusable, however. We've got 4 thumb screws on the back here for both side panels. If we take that off, I want to give you a look at the side panel itself. So you can see that you've got sound dampening material on here, and there is also a little bit of a bump out in the panel so that you have a little bit more room. This does handle coolers up to 150 millimeters in size. I did not have any air coolers that were that short. I have very large tower coolers, so I ended up using a Corsair H80i 120 millimeter in the corner here right above the CPU. Does handle large video cards though. 414 millimeters in length. There's plenty of room here for large video cards. This happens to be an Asus Direct CU2 280X, and we do have one stock 120 millimeter fan here that is blowing air directly over the GPU, sucking air in the front of the case. Your hard drive cages are down here, and there are 4 of them. So your 3.5 inch hard drive bay. The hard drives actually install very easily. They just literally pop in. There is no screwing necessary, though there are some holes in the bracket, so if you did want to add a screw to them for some reason, you can. These brackets, I should show you, also support 2.5 inch drives. You got the 4 holes in the bottom of them, and they include screws to install the 2.5 inch drives into them as well. So very simple install for your hard drives. Overall, I would say the entire process on this case was a very simple install. Most of it was toolless, except for the PCI Express slots, as I mentioned. So for the 5 1/4 inch drives, you have a completely toolless section too. All you have to do is pop out the little filler piece that's in the front. These also do have sound dampening material on them, so if you're not putting a CD drive in, you also get the benefit of the sound dampening in those spots. So this, once you've pulled out that, you literally can just slide your 5 1/4 inch drive in, and it's going to pop in to the holder right there. Again, you can add some screws to it if you feel the need to, but it definitely seems to hold the drive nice and tight. Other than that, it's a fairly basic install. Your standoffs for your motherboard are pre-installed. There is one in the center of the motherboard tray that you can drop your motherboard on. They have the little spike there so that you can get your motherboard all lined up and get your screws into the system. Power supply install, simple as normal. And if we pull off the other side, I can show you some of the cable management features that are available to you on this case. Other side, same thing, also sound dampening material. So the idea, as I said, is silence. So what you're going to see here is you got your motherboard tray with a large cutout. You do have some cable management holes here that are covered up by my motherboard, because this does support mini ITX, micro ATX, and ATX boards. So this is an ATX board. And if you used a micro ATX board, you probably would have an easier time with the cable management, just because you would have access to these holes. However, there is very little room here behind the motherboard tray itself. Very little room. I think, try to give you a better view. That's it, like half of my thumbnail. And right here in the center, you do have an indent where you can run cables up and down, and actually some slots that you can zip tie through. So this is for the H80i, so that's just kind of hanging in there right now. But you also can kind of use the hard drive slots a little bit. If you're not using all the hard drive slots, you can stick some of the cables in down there. And I even was able to zip tie some of the stuff to the 5¼ inch drive bays here. It does come with a 3-speed fan controller. I do not have that hooked up right now, but it is very simple. You hook up a SATA power connector. Yes, a SATA power connector, finally. Somebody who's making the fan controllers, so we don't need to put a 4-pin Molex cable in if we're using a modular power supply. And we don't have anything else that needs it. And then you have 3 connectors that are for 4-pin PWM fans, and a simple little button on the back panel here, little switch to switch between high, low, and medium. So again, it is a budget case. You can get it for anywhere between $59.99 and $50 typically, and it will definitely hold a system without a problem. This is a pretty high-end system with the 280X and a Core i5 processor in it, as well as a full ATX motherboard and a liquid cooler. So for the price, you're really getting a pretty good case. I did find that the sound dampening worked fairly well on it. And why don't I plug it in, start it up, and you can hear for yourself. So I don't know if you can hear it, but I can barely hear the fans spinning on it, and that's impressive to me, especially considering that typically the closed loop coolers tend to make a lot of noise with the pumps and the fans on them. So it's pretty quiet, and I also want to show you the accessories that it comes with. A lot of it is just screws. What you get is a bunch of fan screws. You get your screws to be able to connect your SSD into the trays. You also get your motherboard screws. Most of those are being used. There is a extra standoff that is included, and you also get 4 other screws for connecting in your optical drive if you did decide that you wanted to screw those down, and you get some zip ties with it too for cable management, along with, of course, the big manual that comes in with tons of languages in it and a little warranty card. So why don't we take a look at the benchmarks and how it performed now. So as you can see from the benchmarks, the Corsair Carbide 100R performs fairly well. And if you're looking for a case that's not really flashy, but that has a pretty easy installation and will also keep things nice and quiet for you, then you definitely want to give this a consideration. Really the only thing that bothered me about this case was the PCI Express slots. Everybody's using thumb screws for these things, and I was surprised that Corsair chose to use screws on this particular feature of the case. So that's really the one thing that was kind of bothersome. I also, of course, would have liked to see a little bit more room behind the motherboard tray, but with the little indent down the middle of it, I was able to manage the cables fairly well with the case. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope it helped you with making your decision if you were looking to purchase a new case for your computer. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Take care.